to Law and You here on ITV. I'm Muyi Agumofwegwe. It's always a delight to have you join us here on the program. This week we are turning our attention to anti-corruption efforts in this country. Of course, we have seen the EFCC and the work the agency has done since 2004 when it was established. With all the controversies around the EFCC, we still cannot take away from the fact that the Commission has done so much to redefine the narrative about counter, if you like, anti-graft work in this country. However, we now have states raising concerns about how that there is need to do more work with regards to fighting graft in Nigeria. One of the states now making that effort in a way that's very visible and remarkable is Lagos. As a matter of fact, the Lagos State Governor, Sanwo-Olu, has also signed into law a bill that will lay, for want of better words, the groundwork for this anti-graft fight. The governor goes ahead to tell Nigerians, in particular Lagosians, that this is to complement the efforts of already existing agencies of the federal government, including the EFCC and of course the ICPC. However, as always expected, there are those now cynical about this initiative. They are asking questions as to whether or not this will now become a conflict of interest as far as the war, or if you like, the fight against corruption in Nigeria is concerned. There are those who also think it might now be an avenue to shield those who have been, as it were, accused of graft, particularly in Lagos State. But what does the law say about this kind of move, and what can we deduce given the Constitution, and what exactly should be done as far as putting on the ground framework to deal with issues of graft is concerned? We'll help you make sense of these and find perspectives right after this break. Please stay with me. My guest on the program this week is David Maduku, legal practitioner. It's always a pleasure to have you on the program.
Thank you. Good evening, fans.
I'm sure that there was a feeling you had, or an impression, when you first read about how that the Lagos State government was moving in this direction. Is this novel altogether?
Not really. We have a federal constitution, and the federal constitution should have the spirit and life of federalism. Ordinarily, probably through the governments we have had, the several administrations, probably may not have kept to the letter and spirit of the constitution. Does not mean that a state government taking up the initiative to keep to the letter and spirit is doing the wrong thing. I see that there are two schools of thought in this regard. There are those that feel that, you know, the federal agencies like the EFCC and the IPC, the
ICPC, right?
The ICPC, yes, they have covered the field, so to speak. The doctrine of covering the field, that's what we call it. Yeah. So it may amount to duplication for the Lagos State government to put up the effort to, you know, set up its own anti-corruption agency. But I choose to defer. I choose to defer because it's a good intention they have. And if you look at the law itself, it's targeted at government officials who will misappropriate funds and registered contractors in Lagos State. So they may have had experiences before now that, you know, would have necessitated the setting up of this anti-corruption law. In any case, we've had laws. We have the Criminal Code Act for the states and the Criminal Code for the federal. They are both laws, but
is that far-reaching enough when we talk about corruption?
Well, corruption is a hard-headed monster. It depends on how you look at it, and it depends on how it affects the region where it's operational. So, if the Lagos State government has, you know, the spirit and life of the, you see, let's take a swipe at the Constitution. Pre-independence, we had from 1914 to 1954, we had the Clifford, Richards, Littleton, Macpherson's Constitution. They were operational in that period. Then from the 1959, 1960, 1963, up to 1979, 1990 to the 1999 constitutions. And the recent one we have now that's operational and it's in force is the 1999 Constitution as amended.
Right.
And it has a federal flair, or it is meant to have a federal flair.
In principle.
Yes, in principle, and in practice it should have. It should have. You see, Uyi, the truth is, we encourage, what we get, especially from the government. Why should this discourse be coming up at all? Because the Lagos State government had good intent before, making that law, signing that bill into law. And we have various examples abound of similar laws that are operational already in the country. Again, if you look at it, my brother, this involves crime and criminality. Crime and criminality is not included in the exclusive legislative list.
Right.
So it's not something of exclusive nature.
It's concurrent.
Yes. So they have every right to legislate on it. And we should not make it a topic of public discourse.
But some persons are not concerned fundamentally about motive, what could be informing it. So it's not so much about what it's aimed at achieving, but the motive driving the process.
How do you ascertain the motive? The government has stated it clearly. They've told you there's going to be a commission established in Lagos State for it.
Right.
The law is already in place. The legal framework is already on ground. And they've told you that, look, this thing is targeted at government officials who misappropriate public funds and registered contractors. They were clear.
Can we interface that with the mandate of the EFCC? Of course, you are a lawyer. You are aware, obviously, of the fact that there is an act establishing the EFCC, the EFCC Act of 2004.
Yes.
All right. Doesn't that come in conflict with the Lagos State's proposed law? For instance, because at some point, as well, we have always had in this country,
yes,
you are probably going to be seeing so much of conflict of interest instances, where, for instance, somebody in Lagos, maybe a past official or a serving official, is invited or ultimately arrested by the EFCC for alleged grafts, for instance. And you find the Lagos State government coming up to say, look, this is within our jurisdiction. We've got the legal framework. We've got the resources to prosecute a case of this nature. What does the law say about this?
Well, when there's a conflict, normally the federal enactment takes precedence.
Obviously.
But you have eggheads, you have legal juggernauts that have come together and advised the Lagos State governor before they enacted this law. And you see, my brother, the EFCC Act is very clear. The offenses, the main offenses included there are, if you go to the offense section, offenses for financial malpractice,
Okay.
Offenses that involves terrorism. You understand me? Offenses that are related to retention of criminal conduct,
Okay.
proceeds from criminal conduct. So they are clearly specified.
Okay.
You understand? And the Lagos State law, as it were, is also clearly specified. They are telling you that this is for Lagos State officials and registered contractors.
Okay.
You understand? I see no conflict there. They are clearly spelled out. They understand. Both sides understand their dividing lines, and they know what they are set up for. So the Lagos State government, in any case, my brother, can the EFCC cover all the field? Actually speaking, the Lagos State government should be commended. They are
apparently the Lagos State government is taking initiative to cover the lacuna, the slack.
To get the slack, they say yes, to cover that area. Yeah, because the EFCC is inundated. There's a lot of jobs. There are more coming up every day. There are so many that they have not looked into. We don't mention names here, but there are so politicians that have lined up over the years. They are out there, and other related crimes. There are crimes relating to terrorism, those on false information, those on proceeds from criminal conduct.
Right.
They are out there. So they have their jobs clearly spelled out. Their areas of expertise clearly spelled out.
So what do we say to people now, for example, at this point, who believe, for whatever reason, on whatever grounds, that this whole initiative is such that the idea is to shield certain interests, certain persons, certain personalities from being persecuted further by the EFCC. But let's also keep in mind, sir, that there's a series, as it were, of cases.
Yes.
Emanating from Lagos State, already being handled by the EFCC. Is there any way this law we're talking about on this program disrupts that process?
No, there's none. There's none. I choose not to subscribe to that thinking that it was created probably for the benefit or to prosecute or for the disadvantage of some persons. No, I wouldn't look at it from that perspective. I'll choose to look at it from the perspective that the Lagos State government, they have a very, very, they have a great Attorney General, an egghead in legal practice, and I believe a senior advocate of Nigeria, who has advised the governor appropriately, and I believe who has put in a lot of input into the enactment of this law. And they've looked at the peculiar situation of Lagos. And truly speaking, I will encourage every state government to do that. Let's look at the peculiar circumstances and situation in our states. You hear the clamor every day for the setting up of the state police. It is because of the peculiar security circumstance in each region or zone or state,
right,
that they are clamoring for that. So tomorrow, if they set it up, I strongly belong to the school of thought that says, yeah, we need to have a state police, because we've come to the stage in this country where we need to identify our problems and tackle them headlong. Let's put away sentiments. Let's put away this talk of does it fully comply or doesn't comply. The Constitution itself, it's of a federal nature, and it's the live wire, it's the ground norm. So where the other laws are not in clear conflict with it, they should be allowed to stand. It's for the good intention. In Ghana fully subscribes to the United Nations Convention Against Corruption of 2003, and they have also modeled their own anti-corruption agencies and commissions to follow after what is set up in that convention against corruption. You understand? They don't have regional or states commissions or bodies like us, but we, for our peculiar circumstance in Nigeria and for our peculiar cases like in Lagos State, I strongly subscribe to and I support the formation of the anti-corruption agency.
Let's talk about other states. You know, Lagos is always the pace setter when it comes to things like this. Most times a particular act is first introduced in Lagos, domiciled in Lagos, and then other states begin to domesticate going forward.
Yes.
Other states are likely going to take a cue from Lagos, as we can see right now. But let's also look at some elements of double standards. We have governors today, 7 governors in this country, who have been accused of corruption, in some cases by the EFCC itself. Yeah. All right. What moral and legal justification would they have to pursue a venture such as this one?
Well, we have a principle, a legal principle that we are all aware of. You are aware of, that every Nigerian is presumed innocent until proven guilty.
That's right.
So as long as those things remain allegations, as long as they have not gone through the whole crucible, the whole hub of prosecution in court, and being found wanting by the court, and a judgment or pronouncement made by a court of competent jurisdiction on them, as long as that hasn't been done, we will follow the presumption of the law, which is to the effect that they are innocent until proven guilty. So if you see, the way we prosecute in Nigeria is quite, to me, it leaves a lot to be desired. Because if you go to some other crimes, many other crimes, so to say, what they do, they get their report, the investigating agency, they commence investigation. Most of the time, discreetly, they gather evidence. And when they feel they've gotten to such a stage that they have enough incriminating evidence
to prosecute,
then they carry out the arrest. And as Opposed to our system here where the complaint is made and you go first for the arrest. So yeah, you see, anyway, that's a discourse for another day, how we can reform our own prosecuting and criminal agencies and bodies. But for now, all the leaders, governors, local government chairmen or whatever that have allegations hanging on their head, we cannot properly under our legal system indict them at that stage. They should be properly prosecuted and found wanting, before you can declare somebody an ex-convict or probably a criminal or a suspect. It should have passed through the hub,
right.
So let's give them benefit of doubt. We want to have some level of trust in our system. So we believe that if they are prosecuting EFCC, for instance, they should be prosecuting with a clear conscience and with a mind to prosecute those that are actually guilty of what they are charged for.
I want to talk to you about the prosecutorial process in itself. We're taking a quick break at this point. When we return, we'll look at a few more components as far as this conversation is concerned. So I was going to ask you something about some of the reports we have seen over time, especially since EFCC came into force. There have been cases where the EFCC became inundated. Of course, they still seem inundated as it stands right now, given the volume of petitions that they have to deal with on a daily basis. But more importantly, people have talked about shoddy prosecution by the EFCC. We've seen cases where even judges have had to, as it were, lambast EFCC officials right there in court, in public glare, for doing shabby or shoddy prosecution. You already made an allusion to that in any case. But how much of challenge will states, let's simulate a scenario where states now begin to follow the Lagos state path to say, okay, let's do something more peculiar to our state-specific situation, for example. How much of challenge will they be dealing with in terms of the pressure, the demand placed on their resources, whether human resources or financial resources, for example? Because prosecution of certain cases, especially high-profile cases, doesn't come cheap. So how do we deal with that?
Well, I don't think that should be much of a problem, because
but it is already a problem for the EFCC as it stands today, isn't it?
Well, they may have some challenges. They definitely have some challenges, but I think everything starts with proper management. With a proper head, I think they just have a new head now, the Bauer guy. With a proper head and proper deployment of resources available, I think they can do much better. I'm not indicting anybody. Okay. Yes, but I'm just saying, when we do things properly, when we channel resources through where they are supposed to pass through, we will have better results. We see permit me to say, we see the different state performance of state governments. We know those that have lean and meager resources, and we've seen so many, I don't want to mention names, that have used those meager resources to do great things
in their states.
So it depends on, it's a large function of the leadership. Talking about the states, also having their, anti-corruption body like Lagos State now, I have no doubt at all in my mind, because I know that Governor Sanwo-Olu is determined on several fronts to bring progress and development to Lagos State. And having this anti-corruption body will, to a very large extent, sanitize whatever problems they be having, whatever flaws they be having in the system, regarding maybe procurement, regarding maybe contracts, regarding maybe, that's why they specifically included registered contractors. Right. I'm sure they must have experienced something along that line. That's why they included it in the intention for that law, in setting up the commission, the Lagos State Anti-Corruption Commission. So for those corrupt government officials and for those registered contractors who are not towing the line, I think with the enactment of the law itself, they will tighten up their belts and they will sit up. And if we have a replication of this at the federal level, which I pray we have, because we now have a new head, and we are very optimistic that he will be up and doing. I watched him the other day in the news talking about
the Rashid Bawa.
Yeah, Bawa. You know, talking about the Desiani loot and all that. You know, I watched the I think the National Assembly sitting.
Yes.
And I think I was impressed by, you know, his performance. I'm optimistic that we may see some form of improvement in their operations and their services going forward.
Let's talk about the peculiarities in particular that states should look at before they move on to establish a commission, such as the Lagos State government has done right now. What should be the peculiarities? For example, the situation in Kogi State may not be exactly the same as in Kano or in Kogi or in Edo or Bayelsa.
Yes.
For example, what should it? There can't be a universal template, apparently, can there?
Yes. No, they can't. Yeah, each state has their peculiar circumstance and their peculiar situations.
Right.
And it behoves on the government of the day in the state to, you know, to identify those circumstances and those situations, and to, you know, to propose laws, formulate laws, you know, that would, you know, take care of those situations. For instance, here in Edo State, we have been having issues of insecurity been coming up. But recently we saw the issue of the vigilante that has come up. I think it is a good idea to be encouraged, though I hear of one or two excesses here and there, which ought to be checked now. The idea, generally, the concept is a good one. It should be encouraged, and I think government should, you know, put the necessary steps in place, legal framework and all that, you know, to make them complement the efforts of the police and other security agencies in checking insecurity in the state. You know, at this early formative stage, they can check for the excesses and check it now and make them work in the right way, in the right direction. So far, they've been performing very well with just one or two little complaints here and there, which, like I said, can be checked at this stage.
Okay. Yeah, let it better.
Yes.
I'm fighting the temptation not to ask you this, but I have to, as we wrap it up on the discussion right now. We've seen cases where people are accused of corruption, and the next thing you know is they fly abroad. And then the FCC tells you, well, we would want to prosecute this case further. However, the constraint we're dealing with is we do not have a legal framework as a basis to bring these persons back from whatever countries they would have run to.
Yes.
All right. Some persons have said, look, why don't we do more work along the lines of MLA, mutual legal assistance?
Yes.
So bringing back these people can be easier. I'm sure that's pretty much the case we're having with Desiani, for example.
Yes.
Is there any way states can also leverage certain opportunities to be able to do this in such a way that if you, for example, defrauded those states as a contractor, and those state government has a way of bringing you back here without having necessarily to depend on the FCC that is already overwhelmed with cases, for example?
Yeah, that's a very technical aspect. We have to be very careful when we come to that.
Okay.
You mentioned MLA, and you know we're talking about probably bilateral understandings, bilateral contracts between nations.
Yes.
So the states have to be careful. It's a tender line.
Apparently.
I would advise, well, a commission could be set up to study carefully if that is possible, though I doubt it.
Yeah.
I think that's an issue that should be left rather to under the purview of the federal Ministry of Justice. Yes, to, you know, talk with the other nations. It's like state to state, and when probably the person in question is extradited or brought back to the country, then we can talk of means of prosecuting him, means of returning it. Okay. I hope you are not alluding to a Bori loot, but however it is, whatever is returned, we should also know how to properly dispose them back for use for the state and for the country. I will support from where it was taken. Maybe the federal government, which has been a debate.
Thank you so much for this sense that you have made on the program today. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
I'm talking with Barrister David Maduku about how the Lagos State government has set the pace by setting up an anti-corruption commission, and there's a chance that other states will take a cue from that going forward, just to ensure that corruption is nipped in the bud as quickly as possible. That's our program for you this week. Thank you everyone for watching. We're back here next week Monday at 3:30 p.m. West African time. I'm Wiyag Mofwegwe. Coverage on ITV continues.